and say, well, you say I'm fake news. What's fake about my newscast? And then they would say, well, you're all fake. All you do is lie. And it became evident to me that most of these people who were doing this had completely unsubscribed from my newscast and my colleagues' newscast.
I wonder why. Why would they unsubscribe from you?
Journalism under siege. You heard it here first. Journalism is under siege. University of Carleton, we brought together the best and brightest to bring you our fifis. We've got Glen McGregor from CTV. Let's take a look at who Glen McGregor is. CTV national news journalist in the Parliamentary Press Gallery. And we've got a very famous tweet of his. Let's take a look.
Yeah, this was from back when we were covering the protests. Glen McGregor says, a guy from Orleans streaming the dash cam from @FlyYOW says protesters were responding to a call from Pat King for every able-bodied man with a tank of gas to come. This is fun, he remarks, and he's quote tweeting himself. He says, a group of protesters appear to be doing laps at Ottawa Airport per a dash cam live stream. That was you, Ro.
Yeah, that's not a dash cam. That's a GoPro. BULLETMAKER is available right now. That's a great way to support us. Link is in the description. Post-Apocalyptic, Pre-Armageddon, Action Fantasy. Thank you for your time. Of course, WCFreedom.com right here.
And when you posted this event on Twitter, reaction is overwhelmingly negative about it, right? So I mean, I don't know when it's going to, I mean, if we have another one of these protests, it's going to be a factor. So, you know, I don't know if how violent it's going to get.
What's happening here? I mean, there's some editing there. I'm going to be clear, right? But Twitter, the overwhelming response, I don't know. What could it be? Let's hear.
We look what happened in the United States. Starting in 2016, this was a feature at Trump rallies, you know. But, you know, we saw this in the United States because nobody understood the size of what was a primarily white, rural underclass that was now suddenly a dominant political actor and got Donald Trump elected, right?
Why do Canadian journalists always bring it back to Trump, man? What's...
It's the T word. He said the T word.
Great book called Hillbillyology that kind of describes...
Sorry, what? A book called Hillbillyology? Hold on a second. Did he write it?
A political actor and got Donald Trump elected, right? Great book called Hillbillyology that kind of describes...
Okay, there's a great book called Hillbillyology.
This culture that journalists have completely missed, don't understand, it's gone completely on the radar. Is that happening here? Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit of Hillbillyology over here, Pan.
Wow, yeah, it's something that journalists have missed, and they just don't know anything about it or understand it at all.
But at the same time, I mean, I don't think we have to indulge all, I mean, listening to them does not mean sitting down and having them tell us how you're on the payroll for the federal government and you're getting phone calls from the public safety.
He sounds really salty, dude. He's not happy. He's not happy. He doesn't want to listen to people.
You know, I mean, just all the conspiratorial stuff. So I don't know, like I say, some of them have just checked out, and you're not going to convince people to come back to mainstream media. I mean, I think once
That's
somebody
fair.
has kind of gone over and checked out from reality-based media.
Reality-based media. That's what he's calling himself. He's reality-based media.
Fact-based media, and chosen things that confirm their beliefs. And there was a guy in Ottawa who used to walk around, pre-internet, he used to walk around the streets of Ottawa sticking mimeographed tracts that he'd written, full of conspiracy theory about the Rothschilds, the New World Order, all this stuff, and he'd stick it under people's windows.
Did he just say the New World Order?
Uh-oh, it keeps coming up, doesn't it?
It sure does, man. Never mention the World Economic Forum.
Windshield wipers. And his name was Harold Funk. And people would come out to get their car at the end of the day, and they think they got a parking ticket. And they'd always be relieved to see it was this thing that he had left there.
Oh, it's just Harold Funk. Cool. It's his newsletter. Let me just read that. Speaking of newsletters, make sure you get onto WCFreedom.com and subscribe to our newsletter for great news, reality-based news.
And he was kind of harmless and benign, and I chatted with him a few times, a nice guy. He's no longer with us, but if he were, he'd probably be running HaroldFunk.com. And if he had a half-decent web designer, it would be getting as many views as a lot of other websites.
Oh, that's what it boils down to. You know what I mean? They're upset about the views. It's like, why are...
Yep.
Isn't it?
It's what it seems like. I mean, there was so much good coverage, from YouTubers and other platforms from the convoy. And these guys, every time they would show up with their cameras, they might get heckled a little bit. People would call them fake news, and it really soured their whole experience.
Sad.
And it was all crazy stuff. Like, it was just made no sense. It was wild conspiracy theory. But it's very hard now to differentiate for an unsophisticated reader to tell what's right and what's not. And
it's very difficult for an unsophisticated reader to tell what's right and what's not. Hillbillyology.
That's one of the themes.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's one of the themes here. We're seeing this arrogance from these people that don't think that you're fit enough to really understand what's going on in the world.
I think a lot of it does come down to that. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that they simply believe that we are not able to decide for ourselves what's true and what's not, and they have to really help us with that.
And then you get into the whole confirmation bias, where you're going to give far more credibility to a source that's confirming your own opinions than you would to one that contradicts it. So it seems, I don't mean to be defeatist, but it seems irretrievable.
Irretrievable.
And they really just wanted to disrupt it. I mean, that was all they wanted to do. I mean, people would run into our shots behind us. People would start yelling as soon as I started reading my line.
News, fake news.
People would run and disrupt him.
They were just determined to impede our process. And, on some of the occasions when I talk to people with, I'd feel a little more rambunctious and I want to engage more and say, well, you say I'm fake news. What's fake about my newscast? And then they would say, well, you're all fake. All you do is lie. And it became evident to me that most of these people who were doing this had completely unsubscribed from my newscast and my colleagues' newscast.
I wonder why. Why would they unsubscribe from you?
My back hurts, man. This is so silly. He's like, it became apparent to me that people had unsubscribed from my newscast and my buddy's newscast, and it's because I don't get it.
And so they couldn't really say what they thought was wrong. Some of them did mention the depiction of the swastika and the Confederate flags, but beyond that, it was just kind of a general sense. And it was like it was wisdom they'd received from elsewhere and were spreading. It wasn't really opinions they had formed.
Of course, hillbillyology, right? These are received opinions, not ones, because they're not capable of forming their own, only regurgitating other people's opinions.
So that made it very difficult to kind of respond in any way to it. Heard a lot, which was bizarre to me, but because my network doesn't participate in this media fund that seemed to trigger a lot of people.
Of course, the media fund that doesn't seem to trigger a lot of people. Now, here's the thing about that. There's actually a lot of different bursaries, grants, whatever you want to call them, tax breaks. There's tax breaks, then there's grants. So the thing is, and a lot of this information is not made public. So that's what he's talking about right there, okay? People were upset about that, and they brought that up, that the media is paid by the government, and they are. That's what's amazing here. And I covered that in another video. But you wonder why people don't believe you.
Not that I think necessarily doing so would compromise their integrity, but that was a flashpoint for them.
Okay, you hear what he just said here? Not, of course, that would ever impact your integrity if someone gave you $600 million.
And finally we get the connection to the studio, and then the anchor throws to me, and immediately, just like a wall of noise, profanity, screaming, yelling, and because it's like a little bit like a mob mentality where you have, people will do things in groups that they won't do individually or in smaller groups, so they were just kind of goading themselves into this, and it completely drowned out the hit. And I think the anchor.
We were trying to do a hit piece, and they drowned out our hit. You know what I mean? All that noise.
I mean, For me, this makes me respect like war correspondents, people that actually like get in the middle of actual situations. This guy's crying about truckers that were hanging out near the bouncy castle. Okay, you know what? You need to get a little bit harder, Mr. McGregor. Let's be a real man.
Her at MSNBC had like no idea what was going on, and said, she heard somebody screaming some salty language, and she's like, "Okay, thanks," and that was it. And they cut her off, and that was it. And so they succeeded. Like those people who really don't like the media and think we're lying about everything, managed to shut down our hit.
Our hit piece.
Wow.
Is I think what he was trying to say there. They managed to shut
What
down.
a quitter.
Yeah,
He's
right?
a quitter.
He
He's a quitter. He said, these people wouldn't let us do our job, so we just packed up our cameras and went home.
But before we got active in politics, don't ask me how we did, but here we are today, maybe because that's what passes for journalism today. We were involved in the culture war, very specifically around comic books. You've seen that moral degradation in movies, TV shows, film, comic books as well. That's where we were. I was a big fan, and so was Pan, and Pan specifically with Turtles, by the way, Ninja Turtles. We created these over here, Vestige and BULLETMAKER. Check those out. BULLETMAKER is available right now. That's a great way to support us. Link is in the description. Post-Apocalyptic, Pre-Armageddon, Action Fantasy. Thank you for your time. Of course, WCFreedom.com right here. Please get on that, the newsletter, so you don't miss a beat. And please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and hail, brethren.